Back in the day, when I was young, and maybe some of you have heard this, this is a nursery rhyme from back when I was in elementary school, and every year I ask in class this question, and a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. The nursery rhyme is, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? And I don't know if any of you know the answer to this, but it's a weird answer, like with silver bells and cockle shells and pretty little maids all in a row, which are 3 different kinds of flowers. And that is really not how your garden grows. We want to talk about, and this is probably a really good thing to talk about in the middle of spring, when everybody's planting their seeds in the ground and the plants are growing out of the ground, or in the summer when plants grow like crazy, when the temperature gets like 90 degrees. How does a garden grow? How do you grow? That's what we want to talk about. Every living thing is made of cells. That's one of the bases of cells. So if every living thing is made of cells, how do you grow? You get more cells, bigger cells, or both more and bigger cells. What I should do right now is take a second and pick one of those answers. Okay? Take 15 seconds, think about that answer a minute. Which one would you pick? Are you more cells now than you were when you were 2? Are you bigger cells now than you were when you were 2? Or are your cells both bigger and you have more of them? Here's the answer. Correct answer is A. You're more cells. We can argue about the fact that C would have to be true, but we'll come back to why it's A. That when you grow, you actually grow more cells. We'll see later when we talk about the human body, this is not necessarily true of everything. For example, you can't get more muscle cells. We'll come back to that idea in a minute. So here's the question, why aren't you bigger cells? Why are single-celled organisms microscopic? Did you ever wonder that? Why is it that when we look through a microscope, we see cells, and that's all the bigger? Why aren't cells bigger? Why can't a single-celled organism get to be as big as us? We have to answer that question before we talk about what happens why cells actually divide. So let's talk about what happens if cells get too big. The reason is that if cells get too big, they can't get things in and out of themselves efficiently. Because the bigger a cell gets, there aren't enough ways in and out. And there's a little math equation you can do. If these boxes represent cells, and this box is 1 centimeter on a side, and this box is 10 centimeters on the side, that means this box here has 6 surfaces. A box has 6 surfaces. Its surface area is 6. This box has 6 surfaces. Each surface is 100, so its surface area is 600. Let's pretend then that there are 6 ways in and out of this cell and 600 ways in and out of that cell. Well, what's inside of the box is all the stuff that makes up the cells, the volume. Well, this cell's volume is what? Length times width times height, right? So the volume of this cell is 1 cubic centimeter. So there are 6 roads in for every cubic centimeter in that cell. It's an important idea in just a minute. Okay? This cell's volume is 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. So the volume here is 1,000 cubic centimeters. That means that there are, if we do the math, there are 6 roads in for every 10 cubic centimeters in the cell, or 10 times less roads in. So in this cell, there's 10 times more stuff for the same number of roads in as that one. Now think about that. If we compare that to a city, here are a couple of cities. On the right, we have the city of Chicago. On the left, we have the city of Coopersville. Coopersville, actually, here's all the streets of Cooper. This is actually Metro Coopersville, and this is Metro Chicago. If we just look at the downtown areas, Coopersville actually has only one street into downtown. Really, one, right? It's a one-way street into downtown. Chicago has lots and lots and lots of streets. We have a railroad that runs through, but it doesn't bring anything anymore, but they also have railroads running in. They have airports. Why? There are lots of people in Chicago. People need lots of stuff. They also get rid of lots of stuff. They have lots of trash. You have to have lots of ways in and out of Chicago. The bigger the city, the more ways in and out. Grand Rapids, they keep building the highways a little bit bigger. Every few years, the highways get more lanes. Why? We need more ways to get in and out of Grand Rapids. So if a cell gets too big, as the cell gets bigger, there aren't enough ways to get stuff in and out, it will die. So what does a cell do? Well, when a cell gets too big, it does a process called mitosis. Mitosis is the part of a cell's life where it divides. I'm going to go pretty fast through this. Feel free to pause it if you need to. The important part of mitosis is to copy the DNA and make sure it gets equally to both cells. We haven't really talked about DNA yet, but when we do, we'll come back to that idea. DNA is contained in packets called chromosomes. So in mitosis, what a cell does is it divides the chromosomes equally to both sides. It makes 2 cells with an equal number of chromosomes. On the right is a diagram or an animation of cell division. Okay, you start with 1 cell, and very fast it divides into 2. And again, if you pause the video as that's running, you can see the different stages. There are 5 stages of mitosis. They all end in phase. They have the IPMAT or IPMAT or IP much all the time or some other way to help you remember that, and they all end in phase. Interphase, Prophase, Metaphase, Anaphase, and Telophase. And the importance in learning those is not just to make you memorize something, but to understand what actually happens as the cell divides. And again, go through this pretty quickly. We're going to deal with it in class anyway. Interphase. This is the part of a cell. This is not really mitosis. It's not really part of mitosis. It literally means between phases, between cell divisions. It's the time when a cell is doing whatever a cell does. If it's a nerve cell, it's sending messages. If it's a skin cell with a gland in it, it may be putting out a little sweat. If it's a if it's a muscle cell, it may be contracting. But during this time, late, as the cell gets bigger, it gets the signal to divide and it copies its DNA. Most of the cells in your body right now are at interphase. They're not dividing at all. They're just sitting there doing their job. You know you're in interphase when you can see a nucleus in the cell. This little stringy stuff is not really visible at all. That's chromosome. That's called chromatin, which is the precursor, the pre-thing that's going to be what chromosomes are going to become. And you see something called a nucleolus there. And these, if you click on the pictures here, oops, I missed it. There are pictures of real cells at different stages of mitosis in an onion root. Second stage is prophase. In prophase, the chromosomes become visible. They've been duplicated and they condense together to become visible. You start to lose the nuclear membrane. And what also becomes visible are the things that are actually going to help the chromosomes divide, pull apart, these things called centrioles. Now, you can't see this very well on this because it's the resolution isn't very good. But there's a cell. There's a cell at prophase. Okay, we'll take a look at these in some detail class. Metaphase, meta stands for middle. You can tell metaphase because what happens is these paired chromosomes get lined up in the middle. A cell lines them up in the middle. Now, why would a cell do that? Well, you need to make sure you have a copy of each chromosome to each side. You have to divide the chromosomes equally. And if you're going to divide them equally, the easiest thing to do is to put them together and then make sure they're all paired up. So they all pair up across the middle of the cell. These little things called spindle fibers attach to them, and then they get pulled apart. It's called the spindle that forms to pull them apart. Then comes what's called anaphase, where they're actually being pulled apart by these little fibers. And they get pulled to opposite ends of the cell. Now you see that we have a copy of this chromosome and a copy of that chromosome, one to each side. And if we check our little link here, you can see this cell in the middle. Here you can see how these little stringy finger-like things, those are the chromosomes that have been pulled apart. Telophase, the chromosomes are fully separated. You start to see a nucleus forming. Struggling with this PowerPoint, sorry about that. You start to see the nucleus forming here. And the cell starts to split in half. Then comes something called cytokinesis. Cytokinesis means that the rest of the cell splits in half. Okay, the rest of the cell gets split in half. The cell divides all the way between, sort of pinches in until it splits, and you have two new nucleuses with all the chromosomes. Okay, so what's in charge of this? Well, interestingly enough, we're not really sure. We do know that some cells never do mitosis. Once you're done growing, once you have stopped growing, your muscle cells and nerve cells do not do mitosis. You're like, well, how come I can get bigger muscles then? How come after high school my brother started lifting weights and he got really big? He added stuff to his muscle cells. He added protein to his muscle cells, fibers, so that he could contract them better. That's what, but they don't divide. This is why if you have your spine broken, you cannot regenerate that. You're paralyzed for life because nerve cells don't do mitosis. We do know that mitosis is controlled two places, inside of the cell itself and by outside influences. And we'll talk about that in a second. For example, growth hormone is an outside influence. When you were growing, your brain was producing growth hormone from the pituitary gland, and your cells were dividing faster than they were before. So growth hormone is stimulating cell division. But what if mitosis is not controlled? Well, when mitosis is not controlled, a disease called cancer is the result. We're going to talk about cancer at various times throughout the year because cancer affects 1 in every 3 people in this country will get cancer in their lifetime. Cancer, the basic definition of cancer is abnormal cells that don't divide normally. It's uncontrolled. They just start dividing and keep dividing. They don't stop dividing because they don't have, there could be a lot of reasons. So, cancer kills because the abnormal cells crowd out normal ones, and then the problem with that is they do that after they spread. Quick example with a little sketch. You may wonder, my fabulous drawing ability, why skin cancer, why a mole on your skin is so dangerous. It's just skin. Hack it out. Well, here's the problem. As that cancer starts, as those cells start to divide, they have the ability to break off. And they travel through the bloodstream or the lymphatic system, which we'll talk about later, and they lodge somewhere like your liver. And they start dividing there, and they start growing there. So you literally have cells from your skin that are growing in your liver that shouldn't be there. And your liver has lots of important functions. And so as it's dividing in your liver, it crowds out the normal organs. Or they could travel to your brain and lodge in there, or your lungs and lodge in there, or your kidney and lodge in there. So when you hear that somebody has cancer all the way throughout their body, that's what that means. That it started somewhere, we don't know where, and usually cancers are defined by where they started. So if somebody has liver cancer, that's where it started. If somebody has ovarian cancer, it started in their ovaries. If somebody has breast cancer, it started in the breast. Skin cancer started in the skin. We'll talk more about cancer in class later, too. That's it for today.